Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, Dr. Keir Finlow-Bates, best-selling author of the book, Watch Out Brokers, Here Comes the Blockchain. Doctor, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much.
I waited so long to say, Doctor, welcome to the pod. It's the first doctor on the podcast. You have no idea. I want to talk to you today about, when I say blockchain and people go, oh, like NFTs or Bitcoin or whatever, I want to cut through the fluff. I want to talk about what is it that is exciting for you in this space, talking about blockchain application. And if there isn't anything that excites you, what would you like to see happen?
It's a tricky question. I think the thing is that the applications of blockchain have just exploded, along with the fact that a lot more people are aware that it exists. So maybe I'm going to turn the question on its head and say the problem I see at the moment is that it's become a gold rush. So whereas 4 or 5 years ago, you could kind of tinker away with various corners of blockchain and think about stuff. Now the space is swamped with opportunists who are desperately looking for technical people to be able to implement their ideas. And unfortunately, their ideas are not well thought through because they've just entered the space. So
I agree with you.
What I would like to see is another kind of calming down period where all that fluff and noise gets swept aside again and we can go back to actually doing some real valuable stuff. As for the most recent blockchain application I looked at was actually a website called Zappa.fi. I wanted to work out what assets I had in all my different addresses. And I started writing up my own website, in fact, to do that, to scan through the blockchain and find everything. So it's kind of like archaeology of blockchain. And then having half written it, I thought I should probably check if someone else has done it. And indeed, those guys had. And it's a really, really neat site. It does exactly what I would have done if I'd had the time. So that was this week's investigation.
What do you think needs to happen because for that state to remanifest itself? Because I feel a lot of what we're seeing is media and media-driven or hype-driven through sites like Reddit and Discord. And what needs to happen? What is the fundamental thing that needs to happen?
Well, I mean, the classic model is the Gartner hype cycle, isn't it?
Okay.
Where you've got this kind of, you have this curve that, let's see if I can get it right on the screen, it goes up and then down and then like that, right?
Okay.
And the funny thing with blockchain is we're now sort of on a second hype peak. We had the first one in 2017, which was an awful time from a technical point of view, a great time for some speculators and scammers. And then it kind of collapsed and we had the great crypto winter of 2018 till about a year and a half. And then it exploded again. And that's sort of unusual. I think the internet had it as well. We had different cycles of web kind of mania and collapse. But the funny one with this one is that the second cycle seems to be much bigger than the first one. You know, the dot-com boom was huge and a massive collapse. And it kind of overshadowed all the subsequent ones. So with this one, we don't seem to have learned from as a society from the previous one. And I think that may be because the first boom happened in a relatively small sort of echo chamber. And now there's just such wider awareness. So maybe this is the proper peak of hype. And you need to go through that and then collapse into the trough of disillusionment, as it's called, which filters out all the opportunists and actually allows people who really want to be building something for the future to get their hands dirty and actually
I love
produce something of value.
I love it. Unofficially, Dr. Finlow-Bates calls stops on blockchain. I love it. Let's talk about the current state of crypto, especially the regulation. First of all, India proposed or they implemented 30% tax. Then we have Europe now with limiting, well, there's a bill. We don't know, maybe in a couple of weeks, limiting proof of work, which is going to be significant, and then the Biden administration with their crypto regulations. And I mean, it's not Biden, it's whoever is writing policy. Let's be honest, I don't even think he knows what blockchain is. But talking about acceleration of central bank digital currencies, which seems to be a US driven narrative that's getting very strong at the moment. What does all this mean for crypto in the short to medium term?
I think it's not really possible to give a definite answer on that. I can go through bits of it. So India taxing crypto at 30%. Well, in Finland, they've been taxing it at 33% since forever.
Okay.
And they had the usual hiccups. For example, there was a while where you got taxed on profits, but not on losses.
Yes.
Things like that. So that's being corrected. It's just taking them a while to catch up with being sensible. And they have a history of this. It's like Sweden actually taxed Astrid Lindgren, the writer of the Pippi Longstocking novels, at a rate of 105% accidentally for a year before Parliament corrected that. So nothing new there.
You have to love bureaucracy, right?
You do. It gives mediocre people jobs, so they serve a purpose.
I love it.
So, yeah. So taxation, of course, there will be taxing. That's always the case. I have this tagline that I use occasionally: "The revolution will be taxed."
Okay, makes sense.
So the EU bill, I think it's short-sighted.
Okay.
It's obviously they want to do the right thing, save the climate, save the world. But you've got to think, have they actually considered what the full implications of this are? And, is it feasible, firstly, which I don't think it is.
No.
And secondly, even if they did start kind of clamping down in a draconian, totalitarian way, raiding people's houses for Bitcoin miners, what would the effect be on Europe's position in this new economic opportunity? And the answer is it would be damaging.
Yes.
So I think it needs more thought. I mean, also it's the kind of stick approach. Where's the carrot?
Yes.
Where is the carrot? About carrots, if they thought about carrots as well, then they could say, well, how about we'll tax inefficient use of energy high, and we'll give awards for people who are still engaging in this space but are doing it in a cleaner manner. That could actually help shift the way that we think about energy consumption in the space towards a greener approach. And I happen to be someone who's for that kind of thing. It's just that you need, like with all things, it's a bigger problem.
Correct.
It's the same as people going electric cars will solve everything. Well, they solve some things, they bring along a whole load of other problems. And
it's true.
I'm thinking here about external costs.
Yes, I'm with you. And moving over to the US.
I haven't looked at that very much. I had a quick scan through it, and I didn't understand what the underlying agenda was. Right. And whenever you see a pronouncement from a government, you have to ask yourself, who is saying this and why are they saying it and what's in it for them? And with that regulation, when I looked at it, it came across as muddled. I could interpret it as being very positive for crypto or very negative. And really what it depends on is how the underlying application unfolds, and that'll depend on who it is. If it's an anti-crypto lobby, then it'll be bad. If it's a pro-crypto lobby, they can use it for good.
It seems to me that the calls for, or the fears for, an outright ban, or that Bitcoin, something like Bitcoin is just going to go to zero, those calls are getting softer. Am I reading it wrong?
I think you're right. I mean, I noticed very much in December, January, that there were a lot of what seemed to be kind of paid for lobby pieces, and you could spot them by the certain catchphrases used. Bitcoin has no intrinsic value was a big red flag.
I know you love the word intrinsic, doesn't you?
It's great from a philosophical perspective. If you start thinking about what might the phrase intrinsic value mean, you actually end up with a better understanding of what value is. But when it's used in this sort of tossed out there, it's kind of crypto's bad because no intrinsic value, used by criminals, bad for the environment. These are kind of straw men that are put up to attack it. It's
Yes.
not a logical argument anymore. And so it's disappointing to see a professor of economics from Harvard put something like
No
that in an
less.
article, or
Right.
an economic advisor to a government, because you kind of hope that these people will have a more objective view.
Yes.
But of course, they're human beings, so they have their own agenda and their own viewpoint and their own point to make. And if it happens to not coincide with yours, it's going to be annoying. So.
Well, that's another topic for another conversation. But I think I think it's basically, to me, it's the on and off ramps into fiat that are being policed, as opposed to this fear mongering of an outright ban. And I would say that is fine, as long as you know what the parameters are and what the rules of the game is, because it's hard to play the game if you don't know the rules. And then all the players need to play according to those rules, or respect those rules. And I think the sooner we get to those rules, and it's hard and fast rules, the better.
I agree. It's you wouldn't want to start playing a game in a casino and find that halfway through they've decided that throwing a 7 is no longer good, or
yes,
when it lands on number 13 we take all the money, which is
yes,
the kind of state we're in at the moment. So indeed, and I'm actually pro regulation. I think
yes, yes, well.
The idea of it is good. I'm a bit concerned about the US in that it has this issue where successive presidents just keep creating regulatory bodies, and you can see that in, for example, the fact that they seem to have an infinite number of different police forces, or with different jurisdictions that overlap. And it's the same in the financial world, that you have things like the SEC and the commodities. I can never remember the acronym for them, but you have a bunch of different bodies that have regulatory powers, and they all want to expand their scope of influence as wide as possible, because this is what bureaucracies do. Unless you trim them occasionally, they grow like a weed patch. And the SEC in particular seems to be on a kind of a, can we declare everything a security run at the moment? I mean,
because they've tried many people have tried multiple times to bring a spot Bitcoin ETF into the market, and they've been blocked. And the government is basically just saying, oh, but we are protecting the people from crypto. That's a very dangerous narrative, because whenever a government says, we are protecting the people, or we're protecting you from yourself, we know what's best, we all know how that ends. It's not a great...
Well, usually with book burning, I think. Traditional thing. Yeah.
Doctor, your new work is called the Orthoverse. Am I saying that correct?
That's right.
What is it about? What is it? I saw it this week. Looks really interesting, way above my head. If you can talk to us a bit about that, that would be great.
Right. So the Orthoverse is an ongoing experiment. I have a collaborator in Thailand. He's a Corsican programmer called Richard. And we just hit it off back in January, chatting on LinkedIn about various technical things. And at the time, I'd found a quirk in smart contracts that allowed me to give every single address in the Ethereum space 100 ERC20 tokens.
I remember that. That was awesome.
Yeah. So that's 150 quindecillion tokens, and that's an unimaginably large number, 10 to the power of 48. I mean, it's like, it means there was one token for every atom in the planet Earth. So, and Richard and I worked on making an NFT launch. It took a bit of work, but we did the same thing. We gave everybody an NFT. And it turns out that in order for the NFT to show up on popular marketplaces, you do have to pay. But at the moment, with gas prices being low, you can actually reveal one of these tokens. We call it reveal rather than minting, because the token exists. It's just that you're kind of alerting the marketplaces to its existence. You can still transfer these tokens. It's just they don't show up in the listings. And it turned out the cost to reveal it was like 1/10 of the cost of minting with the way that we'd done it. So
in a layman's terms, why is that the case?
Because the cost of minting means you're running a function to add a piece of data to a data structure, and doing stuff with data is what's costly on Ethereum,
Okay.
storing data. And what we did was we used a trick so that the storing of data for each user was no longer required because every user has the token. So, I mean, it's kind of hard. I haven't got a great analogy for it.
Yeah. It's you'll have to do a piece on that because it's just when I think about it, it goes, woof. You know what I mean? It's really interesting.
Well, actually, here's your analogy. You have,
Yes.
if you look at the benefit system in a socialist country, it's expensive because a bureaucrat has to look at every applicant and spend time deciding whether or not to give that person benefits. Yeah. Now imagine that country says, right, we're just going to give everybody $1,000 a month. Suddenly your admin, a universal basic income.
Universal basic income, yes.
Suddenly your admin costs have dropped dramatically. Instead of needing an army of bureaucrats working and drawing salaries in order to decide whether this person or that person gets the money.
Yes.
Now you just say, we'll just give it to everybody. As long as you prove you are who you are, here's your money. And that would make the benefit system a lot cheaper. It has some negative side effects as well, but you cut the cost. And this is exactly what we've done with the Orthoverse NFT contract. Instead of each user having to pay to have their token handed to them, we've just given everybody a token, and so all that admin overhead is gone.
And
so there's your
all
analogy.
you have to do is reveal it to the public, basically, that I have it. That's
and that's so one single command in the Solidity contract rather than a whole function, and therefore it's cheaper. So I think Richard managed to mint a token for $2.40 a couple of weeks ago when gas was low. So for Ethereum to be able to get your hands on a token for less than $3, that's quite something.
Was that your intent? Sorry, was that your intent here to show? But this is possible. You're doing it like this. We can actually do it like this.
Well, actually, the intent was just to have fun and learn stuff, and that's the whole idea behind the Orthoverse. I mean, there's a whole heap more that we've started tacking on it. The contract has some bugs, so we've worked around them. The contract has a Web3 website, orthoverse.io, where you can go and reveal your token, and we have a Discord. And what we've done is we've just looked at what all the other NFT projects are doing, shilling, community managers, promotions, and we're doing the opposite. So we have the slogan, the Orthoverse is doomed, because we're doing everything the wrong way around. And I'm writing a sequel to my book, Move Over Brokers. Here comes the blockchain. There's
put it up.
That's the Italian version. So I'm doing a sequel called The Orthoverse is Doomed. And I'm writing about how it works, using it to explain NFTs and value and a bit about smart contracts. And the Orthoverse is kind of the narrative, me and Richard discussing and just making stuff up as we go along and telling that story sort of intertwined with the explanations in the way that the punk rock references in the first book kind of hold together the story of blockchain.
I love it. That's so out of the box thinking, and that needs to be celebrated. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us today. If the listeners want to connect with you or find out more about the Orthoverse, where can they do that? Obviously, we'll drop all the links in the socials.
The best place is LinkedIn. That's probably where I have the biggest presence.
But I've seen you venture into Twitter, as have most Linktonians recently. Any thoughts about that before you go? Why is that?
So LinkedIn is, well, the bigger picture is that if you only have one social media presence and you're using it as your marketing strategy, and it is a much better marketing strategy than, for example, cold calling, then you don't want to just have one social media presence, because if you do something that gets you banned, then that's it. Your entire marketing structure has been wiped out. And these social media platforms are Web 2. They are centrally controlled. And if it turns out that they take a dislike to you, then that's it. All the work, the years that you spent building a following are gone. And people don't migrate easily. if you have a big following on one social media platform, you can't just pick them up and carry them over to another one. So as a result, I have a YouTube channel as well, and I have a podcast, except it's just my videos with the video removed and only the audio.
Yeah.
And Twitter seems to be more crypto and NFT friendly.
Yes, and
LinkedIn is a bit kind of, LinkedIn has this, they don't really get it, and they don't seem to like it. So they're not kind of squashing it.
I'm with you.
But
I'm 100% with you. LinkedIn is great for discovery. I've just seen more and more people join Twitter, and I love the conversation over there. It's real time. It's on the pulse. Everything, you can just drop in random thoughts. Whereas I feel LinkedIn punishes you for that, and creators don't need to be punished in that way. But yeah, those are only my thoughts.
Well, LinkedIn's funny because it punishes you for writing well thought out articles as well. It's like, they're not, they kind of, what they want is a serious discussion that's being had in the hotel bar after the conference. Is kind of what I think they're going for.
Yes.
But it changes from month to month. And I think none of these social media sites really have a handle on the octopus that is their user base. They're just kind of they're all trying to squash it into a particular box that they have in mind. And, the tentacles just keep coming out. So Twitter seems to be the most sort of laissez-faire and the most kind of just let them get on with having their chat. And
there you go. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. And we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.